All right, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Emily Bradford from Infinity QS, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Knowing is Half the Battle, a quality strategy based on real-time intelligence. The presentation portion will last about 50 minutes, and then there will be time for questions and answers at the end. If you have a question during the presentation, please type it in the Q&A panel, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. Also, if you're interested in reviewing today's presentation, we will be sending you a link of the recording of today's webinar, as well as posting the recording in our webinar archives on the Infinity QS website. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's webinar, Dirk Ducharme, the Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest. A well-known and long-time industry journalist with deep roots in electronics and engineering, Dirk often covers technological trends, tests and measurements, and supply chain reduction. Thank you all for joining us today, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dirk to get us started.
Okay, thanks, Emily. A topic that's important to a lot of us is how we use quality-related data. What data do you need? What do you do with it? Who uses it? But a topic we probably don't cover nearly enough, and which partly is what this webinar is about, is how you present that same information to different types of users. In other words, how important is it that you give only the most appropriate information to different groups of people? Excuse me. And here to answer that question, and many others, is Infinity QS Engineering Project Manager, Eric Weisbrod. Hello, Eric. How are you doing this morning?
Great, Dirk. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Eric, before we get started, just give us a little bit about your background, just briefly what you do there at Infinity QS, and then let's get going on this.
Okay, sure. I've been an applications engineer at Infinity QS for about 6 years, and have in the past year or so transitioned to more of project management and dealing with some of our larger deployments with our software. So, folks that have multiple sites or just a larger deployment in general, I kind of work more with the application engineers and doing some of those coordinations and fun stuff like today, kind of staying on the forefront of the different offerings that we've got.
Okay, terrific.
All right. Very good. Well, then let's get started. I hope you're able to see my screen all right. So today, we're taking a look at the beautiful Phoenix, Arizona suburban sprawl. I live in Phoenix, and one of my favorite pastimes is flying in a small airplane. And so this is a photograph of doing just that. So you're all going to come along for the ride right now, and on this particular day, we get a call from the control tower telling us there's another airplane 2 miles away, and we're headed towards each other, and to start looking for that airplane and report when we have them in sight. So immediately upon hearing that, some unpleasant thoughts come to mind, and we say, boy, we really need to focus and start looking for this other airplane. So we kind of narrow in on the horizon, and we start scanning, which is what we're taught. And as we're looking, I'm flashing these images of, unfortunate incidents in the background to keep us aware of, how important this really is. So we're looking, and as time goes on, it's more and more frustrating as you're trying to find the other airplane amidst all the clutter. When the slow airplanes were flying, 2 miles means we've got about 30 seconds to see the other airplane, and so we're looking, and the tower's asking, do you see them? And they're asking the other plane, do they see you? And we're looking, do you see them yet? Do you see them yet? I don't see them. Where are they at? Do you see them? Do you see them? And maybe you caught it, maybe you didn't, but the airplane just flew past. That's not an uncommon scenario in terms of being asked to look for another airplane. Normally we see the other airplane and you call the tower and say, hey, I saw them, I can avoid them, no problem. But sometimes it's just like this, right up until the very end, you're looking for that plane, and eventually the tower calls you and says, oh, you passed each other, the traffic is no factor. And while that's a relief, it's a bit frustrating to say, boy, I wish I had seen them in the first place. So let's take this exact same scenario and let's look at it from the air traffic controller's perspective. So we've taken away all that background clutter. We don't have the shadows in the buildings and the fields and the clouds and everything, and it's plain as day to see what's going on. In fact, this is rather boring. The control tower can see generally what's going on. They've got the big picture. They don't have the ability to control our airplanes for us. They don't have the fidelity to know exactly what's going to happen. What they've got are indicators of what's happening. So as we get close to each other, what's going to happen? Well, oh, and then we just harmlessly flew past. So here we're looking at, the same scenario, but through two different pairs of eyes. In the first case, I'm the pilot. I have absolute control over my plane, but I don't necessarily have all the tools at my disposal that the air traffic controller, and vice versa. The air traffic controller doesn't have, control over our airplane or can't know exactly what's going on because they're not in the cockpit with us. So as I mentioned, as engineering project manager and with my roles over the past 6 years, I've worked with manufacturers to see very similar things play out in your manufacturing environments. And for example, an incomplete view of what's going on at your plant. And how's this for a quote? I don't know what's happening on the shop floor until there's a major quality problem or receive a customer complaint. That's a problem of visibility of things within my plant. What about visibility within my organization? What if I don't have global visibility? We can't compare quality performance across plants, and the financial cost of supporting multiple environments and losing data is enormous. So now we're talking about visibility across our organization. What about traceability? We can't easily trace the quality of raw materials all the way to final goods. In a recall, we're under fire to pull documentation, and I'm in a hectic scramble. Again, when we talk about visibility, a lot of folks with their quality data, that stuff's still on paper, which means it's hidden in filing cabinets and folders. What about analytics to that data? With so many systems in play, it's hard to quickly generate the reports that everyone needs. So that'll be something today, the way that I present that information to my operator is probably going to be different than the way that I want to present that same data to my quality manager or my quality executive. And then delayed improvement cycles. As a result of not having access to all of this, with our limited resources, it's important we focus. And currently it's impossible to pinpoint where our quality experts should start. That kind of paralysis by analysis, or we've got lots and lots of data, but where do we take those meaningful cues? So my specific agenda today will talk about some new functionality that we've got in our main quality product offering called Proficient, and we've had a recent release, so Proficient 5. We've got some cool new stuff that's going to help us with visibility. We've got another system for automated data collection called our data management system. We have something to help us keep on track and keep on time called dynamic sampling workflow. There's lots of things going on the shop floor, and it's nice to have something that tells me what checks are due and when they're due, kind of keep me organized. And then we're going to transition to some brand new products that focus on mobile data collection, so being able to collect from a web browser, and then something called Proficient Insight, which is taking the same data that I'm collecting from the shop floor, but making that available in a more dashboard-type format through a web browser. So with that, we'll jump right into a very common request that I've seen at manufacturers, and that's a seemingly very simple one of performing a label verification. So today, when I go through my examples, I'm going to be talking about, I make my own brand of vodka. Since I live in Arizona, it's Cactus Juice Vodka. And it's very important to me that the label that I put on my bottle of vodka is the correct label for that bottle. I also make non-alcoholic products. I make a sparkling cider. And boy, wouldn't it be too bad if I got those labels mixed up. That's not good for either customer. So something in the past that folks have done is I can do an attribute type check where I ask my operator, is the right label on the bottle? And so they can answer yes or no to that, but it of course leaves things up to interpretation. So we've got some new functionality that gives me a better visibility to it, and I'd rather, instead of showing it to you on slide, show it to you directly in the software. So this is Proficient, and this is our software where we've got, control charts and histograms and things. And here I'm going to be performing my label verification. And so the first thing it asks for is a scanned barcode. Now I don't actually have one, but I've used USB barcode scanner, so I'm going to say I just scan the barcode on my product. And we'll let the software tell us whether we've done a good job or not. So there we get a very clear indicator to the operator that they've passed their inspection. Likewise, if I go to perform another label verification, let's just change the last digit, saying, oh, whoops, I grabbed the wrong label. When I scan it, again, I get a very clear indicator. So for something like this, though it's an attribute test, I don't need an attribute control chart showing me, telling my operator that something's happened. Here, I can just use these very simple green-red indicators that tell them, and I can even see now that I can see the expected barcode, what was scanned, and whether or not I passed or failed. And I've got some color coding there.
And Eric, you're saying this is real time?
That's correct. This is all happening real time. I'm actually feeding data into a database that resides on one of our corporate servers, actually in Virginia. And so I'm putting this data in. I'm getting the real-time feedback, and I'm even getting then these real-time notifications.
Could this be set up on an automated line by any, or is it normally set up on an automated line, or is this typically where you might have somebody with a manual barcode scanner or an RFID scanner or something like that?
I would say it's most common to have a person doing that, but it could absolutely be set up on an automated line as well. And actually, we'll talk about that with the data management system. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and just a reminder, anybody, if you have questions during the show, be sure to put them into the Q&A box in the on your screen. If you don't see it, if you go to the top of your screen, there's a little green pull-down menu. If you scroll to the right, you'll see there's a little box that says QA. If you click that, it will make that Q&A box appear on your screen, and you can type in any questions there.
Excellent. All right, thanks, Dirk. So our very next topic then is exactly what you brought up. The data management system, which is for automated or lights out type data collection. So for example, I've got here on this graphic I'm showing on the left, I've got a whole bunch of different ways I might collect data. I might have data coming from another database, from a system like Wonderware. I might have an OPC server talking to PLCs, or something we call grid data, which could be a text file, a serial port, an IP address. So here, I've got a lot of different sources of data, and the data management system is able to interface with those, and then we talk about what's the destination for those guys. In our case, it's most common, obviously, since we have our Proficient software, that automated data goes into the Proficient database. We also have a historian table for data that's not quite a subgroup yet, but then we also offer APIs, software development kits, where you can write your own software to take the results of this and push it to some other environment. And so in this case, I've got a lot of different ways of talking to automated data, and historically what this has been for is subgroup data themselves. So I've got some process data or product data that's, I've got PLCs that are measuring a chamber pressure or temperature or line speed, and I want to tap into that every 5 or 10 minutes to see how often or see how I'm performing, so I can control chart and do meaningful process control. Something that's new to us for the data management system is the ability to take non-measurement data. So for example, I've got a piece of equipment here, and we have another piece of software we're going to look at in a bit called Dynamic Sampling Workflow. And this basically is a timer that tells me when it's time to collect data. Well, if my piece of equipment has the ability to actually output its current status, so here I can send a signal, the data management system processes that, it makes it to the Proficient database, which then allows my operator to know that it's time to begin collecting data. So here's an instance of increasing visibility, not to the data themselves, but greatly simplifying the workflow for the user. Or I gave the example of doing my label verifications, and as you saw, I was just doing this on this one label for this one fictive cactus juice vodka that I make. But what happens if I have hundreds or thousands of those labels? How does the system know what label to expect for which product? Well, maybe I've got another system that already knows that. So here I've got this ERP system, for example, and the data management system has the ability to run queries against that system. So we'll say, hey, every 10 minutes, go query my ERP system and look for, say, new parts. And if a new part is entered into the ERP system, we can transfer that information. We can put it in our Proficient database. Maybe I've got specification limits that go with that. Maybe I've got lot information that goes with that. So now I've saved myself having to have somebody key it in 2 places, so I've reduced error. I've increased the visibility for my quality system because I can say, look, now I've got all of this information already in my quality system without anyone actually having to, I'm kind of using air quotes, to quote unquote do something to make that happen. It just all runs in the background.
So Eric, are you saying that Proficient can be set up so that it will know when a new part or new spec limits or whatever are added to the ERP and then just pull that in, or do they have to be pushed to Proficient from the ERP system?
We do a pull, so it would be a time-based pull, and then we've got things in the system to serve as markers so that you don't say try to re-bring in the same information again and again. So something that acts as a marker so that you can say, okay, only give me things that are new since the last time you ran.
Okay.
And just to show that briefly, I'm going to go back to my system here, and I'll use the example of lock. It was the last one I had up, and so in this example, I make a blue part and a yellow part, and when I click on blue part, I want to see. Here's a list of all the lots that are in my Proficient system. Okay, and they all start with BP. And I'm going to go to my ERP system here. So this is just my fake ERP system that I made for today. And I'm going to say I'm going to create a new lot. And it's for blue parts. And it's my Quality Digest lot. All right, so I've just saved that to my ERP system. And in the background, my data management system has gone and picked that up. And so now when I actually go to look for it from Proficient, I can see there's my Quality Digest lot that's available for my user. So now my folks who are used to dealing with the ERP system don't have to go 2 places. I don't have to double up resources or anything like that. Likewise, now from my ERP system, I'm going to say, oh, you know what? This lot is now done being run. I'm not running it anymore. So of course I don't want my operators to accidentally pick that for their use. So I've closed the lot in my ERP system, and when I come back to my quality system, I can see that lot is no longer available for me to select from the list because I've changed its status to be a closed lot, so now my operator can't get to it. So that's another way, and again, it's a slightly different interpretation of visibility, but it's again making sure that the end user gets the information that they need and kind of only the information that they need. Any questions? Any questions on that?
Yeah, actually, we had a couple questions from Zubair. He wanted to know, speaking of RFIDs, are they connected, or can they be connected via LAN or WLAN, or is this something where it's got to be connected directly into, let's say, the laptop or the system, via some sort of, ASCII interface, device?
So we've got multiple ways of doing those things. Our data management system, for example, and then even this system here, we could pull that from a serial cable, from an IP address. If you had something that was ASCII emulation, that would come in directly then as keyboard entry. So there are multiple ways that you could do it depending on the system that you've got.
Okay, and another question, and I'm not sure I understand this one. I'll just read it to you here. Zubair asked, am I right to say that this is a federated data with so many sources of data? I'm not sure what he means by federated.
I am not certain.
Confederated. Oops, somebody's video just came on here. Yeah, so I'm not sure. I guess just to kind of reiterate, though, is you have the ability to pull in your data from a wide variety of sources, correct?
That's correct. And Sylvia just had one come up. Can I keep the specs on all products and all parameters in Microsoft Excel and use this feature to have Infinity pull them from Excel? We won't read directly from Excel. We could read from a text file, like a tab delimited text or a CSV, And I believe, and I'm not 100% certain on this, but I think you can set up ODBC connections from Excel. So there might be, but there's some older technologies for interfacing with Excel, like DDE, Dynamic Data Exchange, but those I think have all gone away from just from the Microsoft side of things.
Okay.
And I see from Zubair, federated data is connecting to many sources. I'm going to take a stab at answering that. The data management system, and let me pull up this slide. The fact that I can talk to all of these different sources, one of the benefits with the data management system is the ability to say, I want some of the data to come from my OPC server, some of it to come from an IP address, and some of it to come from another database. And I could combine those results together to get a meaningful subgroup with components from say each of those. You could say, hey, my MES system knows what lot is running. My OPC server knows what my line temperature is, but an IP address knows what my I don't know what my product's temperature is. So I could combine those together into one subgroup. Of course, synchronizing timing and making sure you're getting the right things coupled together.
Okay.
All right. So let's carry on to dynamic sampling workflow. So here's probably a pretty typical manufacturing scene, and here I've got somebody that's doing their work, and maybe we have product checks that they need to do. But of course, this being the real world, my work center is in one place, but my PC is in another, and so it requires them to walk from their work center over to the PC to take their measurements. One of the things that we use with our dynamic sampling workflow is it provides this really convenient green, yellow, red countdown clock to tell you when your checks are due. But one thing that we've had manufacturers say is, boy, I can't see my computer screen from where I'm doing my work. So I now have to walk all the way over to my computer to say, is it time to do my check? So something that we've done to help our visibility, and this borrows a cue from my beloved aviation hobby, on airplanes we have lights. We have landing lights and anti-collision lights and strobes and all kinds of lights. So why not put lights on our products or on our processes? So here I've got, say, 4 different pieces of equipment, and here I've got my dynamic sampling workflow window to show me when my checks are due. So when my computer screen is yellow, what we do is we send out a signal, and in this case, because I'm using a light tower, I've set it up to appropriately say, change yellow when the system is yellow. So now my operator can stay right where they're at their work center, and they can very easily see, based on the status of their lights, when their collections are due. So a green light means you're fine, you don't have anything to worry about. A yellow light means you're going to have your collection due soon. And if I get a red light, well, that means that I'm now past due. I've missed a data collection. So this allows me to literally improve my visibility, not even through the software itself, but actually being able to see the the results of this guy right on the equipment themselves. And just to show, let's just show this briefly, so you can kind of see it a little bit better. I don't have a light tower that I can show well from here, but I do have I do have some PNG graphics that will simulate a light tower just fine. So for example, something. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the whole idea here is to be able, the software to be able to signal the operator to perform some sort of operation.
That's correct. So dynamic sampling workflow, in this case, you can see I've got this green countdown timer, and if I click on it, it opens up my window, and I can see, okay, on my line, I have 3 different things I need to do. I need to perform a label verification. I have to check how many bottles were rejected in the reject bin, and I also need to check my cap diameter. So these 3 things are things that I need to do, and I can see in about 30 seconds I'm going to be due for my label verification. So this is a very easy interface to look at, but of course it's most applicable if I can actually see my computer screen. If I can't see my screen, that's where the light tower comes in handy, because of course I can see that from a long distance away.
So it looks like what we're talking about, and I'm not sure if you mentioned this at the top of the hour, but this seems to be a trend among the newer software, such as Infinity QS, is we're talking about more than just data collection and statistical process control. We're talking about data collection, data storage, work instructions, all these kind of things all into one, where we're handling the data from the beginning to the end and doing pretty much whatever needs to be done with it, including things like this, which are really work instructions.
That's exactly right. You know, our software started out as real-time statistical process control software, but I mean, most of the customers we serve, just, you know, so many different manufacturing environments and industries, you know, the real thing that they're looking for is a repository for their quality data. And so here I just perform my, you know, my barcode. Look at that, I get my visualization that I passed. That's great. And, you know, it gets saved to my database. And now that the data has gone in, now my dynamic sampling workflow, it knows that that's been collected, and my light turns green. So I know that I'm good to go. And if I go look at my schedule, I can see now my next label verification. I don't have to worry about it for another 50 minutes.
Cool.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun going into just beyond the raw data collection and visualization themselves to some of these other, maybe it's a little bit softer skill set, but it's something that really helps people in their day-to-day operations. So kind of summing up where we're at right now, in Proficient we added this ability to do this barcode scanning, and here I did it with a numerical value, but it could certainly be alphanumeric. We can worry about case sensitivity and things like that, and we call that functionality string compare. And here I'm actually showing, this is a ruggedized tablet. It's a smaller form factor, and folks love stuff like this. It works great on there because it's such a simple user interface. For dynamic sampling workflow, you know, we did this literal sort of visualization where we sent out a light, a signal to a light tower. It doesn't have to just be a light tower. It could be to a horn. It could be to a scrolling LED sign, what have you. In this case, I had a light tower to work with, so that's what I did. But the software itself just sends out a status change indicator, but you could then interpret that to do, you know, you could do more with that than just a light tower itself. And then the data management system, you know, here we talked about visibility for non-subgroup data, and it allows folks to operate more integrated, to keep, you know, to keep the master of each data type in their appropriate system. You know, there's a lot of room for sharing, but it also makes sense to have things in different places. So it's nice being able to get the advantages of both. So now, stepping outside of these things, which are functionalities that we've had before, to talk about mobile data collection. And this is kind of neat. I guess I'm a little biased, but you know, I've got this reject count that I have to do in a minute and a half, and so and my light tower here is turned yellow, so you know it's telling me that that's due. But my reject bin isn't at the computer that I'm standing at right here. So man, how am I going to get those values? The reject bin is way on the other side of the plant, or at the end of my line, the other end. So what I could do is I can walk down there, I can go count how many bottles are in, and then walk back to my computer and type them in. Of course, I might forget. Maybe somebody, you know, flags me down on the way, or maybe I have lots of other things to do and I don't want to have to go all the way out and back. So here I've got just a simple web browser. I'm just in Firefox, and I'm signed into our mobile data collection, and you can see something I've got available to me here is this reject count, and it references the same database that I'm using with my other products. So the fact that I've got automated data, the fact that I've got folks doing label verifications or maybe doing net contents, things like that, or now here I'm going to be doing some attribute data collection, and so maybe I've walked all the way down to my reject bin. I've got a smartphone in my hand which has a browser on it, and I can say, oh, look at this, in my bin I found that there are There are 5 bottles that have been rejected. And so when I save that guy, I'm going to get a confirmation that it's saved to the database. My scheduler, my dynamic sampling workflow here is going to change color to tell me, and my light tower color change as well. So now how's that for visibility? You know, now I've got the ability to start collecting data beyond the confines of my 4 walls.
And you're saying this data could be basically collected into any device which has, as long as you have an internet access. So whether it's a laptop or a mobile phone or an iPad or whatever, you can collect this data and basically just over the web you're feeding it back into the Proficient software.
That's correct. And so it's nice because all of the data now goes into one repository. So even though I'm collecting it on my mobile device, it's actually going into the same database that all the rest of my shop floor data is going into. So for things like audits or for analyses and things like that, I've got the ability to make those collections. And I've set up just a few other examples of where I might want to do things like this. So I was talking about doing those reject counts, something in my plant, but maybe I want to perform a processing audit. So I'm a corporate employee. I need to go to our various other sites, and here I'm going to be auditing a filler room of one of my cactus juice vodka plants, and I'm going to go in and make sure that the filling room is up to snuff. So are the safety guards in place? Yes, they are. Is the shift data available for operators? Are event logs available for people? Have the appropriate materials been staged? Have scales been calibrated? Is the workspace clean? I've gone through and I've done all of these sorts of, while I'm collecting data, these aren't really SPC type pieces of information. But again, now I've just clicked save, and I've got that information, accessible to me now when I get back to my desk. If I've got something like a Citrix connection or something, I could even have that stuff served up right from there. So it's kind of neat having the ability to expand your horizons for that data collection, giving you visibility to things you didn't have before. And actually, boy, Dirk, I've got this cap diameter check to do.
Hey,
I am slammed, my friend. I just don't have the time. I got about 6.5 minutes, and I was wondering, you seem to have some time on your hands. Would you be able to maybe do that check for me?
Sure. So let's see if this works. So I'm gonna talk my way through this here, and Eric, I'll have to, as long as I'm talking, my video will show. So if you interrupt me, it'll turn off. So hopefully I'll remember how to do this right. So I have what you're seeing on your screen there is simply my Samsung Charge smartphone, and all I've done is gone out to the website to the IP address that Eric gave me earlier. So now I'm just running a browser application on my smartphone, and I'm going to select mobile data collection, and it's going to bring me into that. And I'm going to click on requirements up here. Let's show you that. Sorry about that. So I clicked on requirements, or maybe I clicked on requirements. Let me click it again. There we go. Because sometimes where I'm at right now, I don't have a great cell phone connection, so hopefully, let me go back. 1 second here. If nothing else, I'll do it on my laptop. All right. Okay. One last try, and we'll just. Okay, we're going to mobile data collection, and we'll click on requirements. There we go. Now we're getting there. I'm going to click on cap diameter. Should see that there. And filling line number 1. And it's loading. I got kind of a slow connection here. There we go. And I'm going to click the next button, which is going to take me to where I'm going to enter my data. And now we can see my little data entry screen right there. So I'm going to put in a cap diameter, and I believe these are supposed to be about 1 inch. So I'm going to put in 0.0 9965. Let's say I measured this with some sort of a micrometer or caliper or something. I'll say done, and I will save that data. And that is it. I've done my mobile data collection on my smartphone. So you should be able to see it on your side. Is that right, Eric?
That's right. So the light tower changed from yellow to green. So thank you much, sir. And if we go look at our cap diameter data, I'm able to see your results here, and I've got mine truncated to the 3 decimal places. But
okay.
And actually, there we go. That's it. I just had to refresh. So there we go. I can see that it was 12:35 Phoenix time, which is 11:35 your time, correct?
Right.
And we've got the data collected.
So
thank you, sir.
That actually answers a question I think Zubair had earlier too about you can collect the data from any site really, and the data can be collected. I manually typed in the data, but it could just as easily have been collected using you know, a caliper or micrometer that had a digital output and went directly into my laptop or my smartphone or whatever in order to eliminate transcription errors from data entry.
That's correct. Yep. And so the thing that this gives us is the simplicity of, you know, entry from a simple web browser. So I'm going to get, now that we've done that, as much as I love that, we're going to get that annoying clock out of our way. So what this does for us is it really opens up where we can start to collect that data. Now you've already shown this, so I'll quick slip through this. You know, these are screenshots that I took just from my iPhone. So though I showed it to you on my laptop, it absolutely fits, you know, in a mobile browser. You can sort by here, sorted by the processes, or as you said, by the requirements. So I can look at that from different ways of sorting, basically, to make my operator's life easier. You know, I can choose the process. I get a verification screen that tells me this is what I'm going to be collecting. So I'm going to be collecting information about filler room 1. Here I'm doing a processing audit, so not your cap diameters. And now you can see those exact same drop downs that I saw before, and I'm able to just navigate through that in my iOS browser. And so it's real easy. You can use the next to take you from field to field. And so as I'm clicking, I'm just able to, you know, click, click, click. When I'm all done, I get this this notification that my results have been saved to my Proficient database. So basically, as soon as I save it and I get this notification, those results are available, you know, in my database. And then finally, it's a really simple thing to enable. And there's basically a single checkbox that if you're using that dynamic sampling workflow that I had up, if you're already using that, there's a single checkbox that you check to say make this available for mobile data collection. So it's a fun way of being able to get that information out to a variety of devices and getting me data from places that I maybe just couldn't get before. So maybe I've got something I want measured that's up in a catwalk or somewhere that's really inconvenient for me to have a computer. Okay, well I can now get up to that place and I can use my smart device and, you know, whatever that I've got a browser on. Maybe I've got an automated environment, but I've got HMIs on all of these robots, but I don't have them automated and tied into my system yet. So I want to walk out to one of these robot arms and look at how many errors it's encountered or how many pieces it's gone through or what have you. I could do that. If I manufacture something that's very, very large, obviously if I need to take a collection from way out on a wing skin or up on top of the fuselage, it would be nice to be able to have a small device that I can just get that information when I need it. What if I make something really large that's not assembled inside a facility? You know, these large dump trucks go out on rail cars and get assembled once they actually get to their site. So, you know, this is something where I'll bet you there's tons of data that goes with these that it would be very difficult to get into a central repository otherwise, right? It would be easy to do on paper or to save local onto something, but to get it into that one central system, so you can start doing comparative analyses, that's more difficult if you don't have something, you know, nimble to collect on. Here's a natural gas compressor. Maybe I want to look at how it's performing. I want to look at its emission results, what have you. Again, it's very easy for me to do those sorts of things in the field, assuming I've got cell reception, of course.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, Eric. Is is any data stored on the device itself? You know, my phone or my laptop, or is this real time where it has to go out over the internet?
This is real time. It does need to go out over the internet, so it's not stored locally. And the reason for that is because it's just using a simple browser, so it's exceptionally light. You know, there's nothing else to go with it. But it is something to keep in mind. Obviously, if you're going to a natural gas site that's in the middle of nowhere, you know, in Texas or Oklahoma or something like that, cell reception might be tough.
And another question we had come in is, can electronic data sources be used with the software? And they mean, you know, a measurement devices, calipers, micrometers, scales, etc. I believe, yeah, right? I mean, as long as it has some sort of digital output and you can get it into the software, you're okay.
Right. So in Proficient, yes. In terms of this, I would think it would have to be like a Bluetooth connectivity or something like that. ASCII based, where you could run directly into your form field. Correct.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And then finally, a place that this also opens up some opportunities that could be interesting are point of sale type data collections. You know, if I'm in somewhere that, you know, my product is a name brand product and I want to see how it's being stocked on the shelves, or heck, I could even walk up to that person, and if they bought the product that I'm making, I could ask them, what do you think of it? What made you buy it? How do you like the packaging, et cetera, et cetera? And I could do an impromptu, you know, customer satisfaction survey right from there. So interesting possibilities when you start to open up that visibility to say, well, boy, what else can we learn about our product that can help us out? You know, sometimes there's just not the visibility to that information. And then the final topic when we're talking about this, you know, this was web-based data collection, but what about some web-based data viewing themselves? And we've got another product called Proficient Insight, and this is again feeding off the exact same database that I'm entering data into. In this instance, all of the items that we're looking at, I've basically simulated 4 sites that make my cactus juice vodka, each with a single production line, and I've got 1 year's worth of data for data collected every hour. So it's some 30,000-ish data points that we're looking at here. And you know, our Proficient product, we've got things like control charts and histograms and Paretos and all of those, you know, very typical quality-based things. And for Insight, what we wanted was something to give more of these dashboard and overview items, so that I'm able to you know, going beyond even just the quality data, start making some business decisions off of that same data set that my shop floor operators are collecting. So some of the items that I've got here, I've got this starting in the upper left corner here, I've got a gauge. And something that's very important to me as a beverage manufacturer are MAV violations, so maximum allowable variation. If I tell you I'm putting so much you know, alcohol in this bottle, I have to meet that. Every time I have one of those violations, that's a big deal to me. So here I can see in the past year I've had 29 violations. And of course we're shooting for 0, but I've got my color-coded zones that I've set where my goals are at. And so, you know, this is a very quick indicator. If I'm an executive or quality manager, what have you, I can look at this and say, boom, I know across my company how we're doing for the year on our violations. Taking the same information, I'm saying, show me how many violations I've had by month per site. And you can notice, you know, even though I've got 4 sites, only 2 of the sites have given me violations, and I can see one site gave me some in the past, but then stopped, and another site has started having problems. So this starts to tell me a story a bit and saying, well, boy, I'm going to have to, maybe I need to schedule a visit with those plant managers or the quality managers there to start to understand, well, what's going on? You know, did we have a lot of employee turnover? You know, why did we stop getting violations, which is great, but also then, you know, why did we start picking some up? And here I've got a very uninteresting pie chart because it's that same information just showing me, you know, the proportion that came from those sites. Going beyond, though, then that's just kind of regulatory information. Now, if I want to go into process improvement, you know, we can talk about here I've got my PPK, and again, for this product across all sites, I can see how my lines are running, and I can see, boy, I'm not running so well. Again, I can drill down into a bit more. I've got some trending here that shows me for my 4 sites how they've done. Some are really improving, some are getting worse, some have just stayed bad. I've got some other things that might be of interest, how many data values I'm collecting every month. I can see some of my sites aren't collecting as much data as they should be. Why is that? Maybe it's a training issue.
And is this where you would typically maybe generate your SBC charts and that sort of stuff, or would that be somewhere else?
That would be somewhere else. This is intended to be this high-level summary information, and again to be very light in terms of what's required. You know, in our software that's client-based, we've got our control charts and Paretos and box and whisker plots and things you can dig into and filter and really get into the nitty-gritty of the data. Whereas here, what we want to do is we want to give you that high-level picture in a way that's very easily digestible.
And Zubair wants to know if these can be, if you can customize the widgets in this dashboard. I'm not sure. I'm wondering if by widget he means create your own specific kind of graph based on whatever specs you want to look at, whether it's customer specs or whatever, or these canned visualizations that you have and you just pick from something that's already generated.
We've got there's a lot of customization that you can do within a type. So here, if for example, I wanted a gauge. So instead of a line or a column chart or whatever, I wanted a gauge, and I can choose which metrics. I can choose the data selection that goes in to generating those metrics, as well as for more sophisticated things, how they're sorted out. So for example, here's a column chart that's showing me net contents, so I can start to see that some sites are overfilling their products and therefore giving away product. I can see that one way, but then here's that exact same data, but I've said, boy, I'd like to see it shift by shift to see are shift variations important. So gotcha. We give you a lot of configurability for some set types. So we have column graphs and bar graphs, and here's these side-by-side or stacked columns, etc. So there's a lot you can do to configure them. You don't start with a completely clean slate, but you can choose the time frame, the data set, the way that you want it sorted. Here I've got these guys sorted by month ascending, but I could do descending, or I could stack them by the site themselves. There's a lot of configurability there.
And this is stored data, not real-time data. Is that correct? It's stored data, yes. But I mean, it's real-time connection to the database. So there, I just click refresh, and so it's refreshing to the database. Basically, whenever you come into it anew, it'll be real-time data. But just for performance and things like that, we've allowed it so that you can choose when you want. But here we go. I've got these 9 widgets, each summarizing 30,000 some values, and it took 10-15 seconds to be able to refresh that. And just a reminder to people, if you have any questions, be sure to get them to us. If you don't see the Q&A box, go to the top of your screen, click or mouse over the green pull-down menu, go to the right, you'll see Q&A, and that'll open up your Q&A chat box to send us any questions.
All right, so I'm going to wrap this up, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for questions and answers. I wanted to show this exact same information on on a mobile device, just so you can see it doesn't make a bunch of tiny little thumbnails of these items. So it's designed to fit in mobile browsers. You can navigate to other dashboards. You can see up at the top. And then here I'm just scrolling between the various graphs. So it looks great on my mobile device, which is nice. You know, here mobile is really cool. If I'm visiting a customer or another site, I don't have to have any software installed locally. You know, here I could just say, okay, show me that information, you know, directly from the web page. Of course, if I am traveling, you know, we all probably spend too much time in airports and train stations and such. Heck, if I'm on a flight and I have Wi-Fi and I'm above 10,000 feet, yeah, on my morning commute to work, which of course, that's what everybody needs, right? Just one more way to be tied into the office. But it's great, right? Maybe you can leave a few minutes early or head in a few minutes later because you can review some of that stuff and make use of that idle time anyhow. Of course, it works great if you're working from home because you don't have to have any special software. So, well, I mean, if you're working from home, well, working from home. Oh, right, working from home. I work from home, so or a lot. I travel quite a bit, but when I don't, I've got a home office that I make extensive use of. So there's a lot of flexibility there.
Measuring the diameters of golf balls. I see what you're doing.
Well, that's right. You know, and you got to make sure that they all have the same number of dimples and all that stuff. Somebody's got to check that stuff.
Somebody's got to do it. Hey, go ahead. Go ahead, Eric.
I just wanted to. I'll just quick wrap these guys up. So mobile data collection is designed to run in any web browser. Untethered data collection. The results post immediately then into that Proficient database, so I can get to it with other tools. You know, I said it was simple to enable, and there's a single checkbox. There it is. If you're using that dynamic sampling workflow, just come in and check the box and say, oh yeah, enable it for mobile data collection. And something I didn't show, but I signed in as an administrator, so I had lots and lots of stuff I could collect data for. But I might want, you know, a little bit more targeted audience. So I can choose which users get which data entry screens. Very similarly, Insight is designed to run in any web browser. It's the same Proficient data with some new tools, so better, you know, some different visualization in ways you haven't been able to see it before. I've got my dashboards for my critical information, so I kind of got these prepackaged, you know, packs that I can look at that information. Displays great on PCs, tablets, and mobile devices, which of course means you can get to your data when you're here. Oh, that's me, by the way. You don't know what I look like, but that would be me. You can get to your data here. You can get to your data when you're here, or of course, even when you're here.
Hey, watch where you're going, man.
Exactly. So you can create your dashboards then also from your web browser. There's not special software to create those dashboards or those items. So with all of these tools at one's disposal, you know, what are you going to do to improve your visibility? All right, so now we've got, what, about 7 minutes or so for questions?
Yeah, we got a few minutes here. Rick wants to know what was the tablet? You showed a couple times a ruggedized tablet that was using to scan the barcode. He's
Yep.
just curious what that device was, if you remember.
It's a Mobile Demand T7000.
There you go, Rick. Let's talk a little bit about the Proficient platform. I mean, what does this run on? Will this run on basically any kind of business class computer, as long as it's configured to be a web host and so forth?
So Proficient itself runs on a Windows machine. So if I'm looking at things like these control charts and stuff, this is just running on a standard Windows 7, Windows 8, XP, what have you. But for things like the web data, mobile data collection, and Insight, yeah, you need Internet Information Services, so Windows IIS, and that needs to be configured and such. But yeah, we don't have any real big special requirements in terms of the environments we run in. Things like the database, any ODBC compliant database, most popular are Microsoft SQL or Oracle databases. But if you've got something else that's ODBC compliant, we'll play with that as well.
And I'm assuming there's a certain amount of configuration where you're going to have to go in, a company's got some sort of ERP system, SAP, whatever, you're going to have to tie into that, interface into that in order to do this polling, to pull information from their ERP and so forth, right?
That's right. Integration with other systems seems to be a real hot topic with manufacturers, and it's never impossible, but it's seldom easy. Oftentimes if you've got those ERP systems, a lot of them don't want us directly tying into them. So sometimes you'll have to create an external view or something of the like that they're okay with. So they say, okay, if you create this external view that we'll push to, then have the Proficient data management system look at that view and bring that information in. So yeah, there are some I's to be dotted, T's to be crossed, and P's and Q's to certainly be mined.
Now, are most ERP systems, do most of those allow data retrieval to an external system like Proficient?
I would say for the most part, yes. There are some, some of the larger ones, like like an SAP, they don't like it, and understandably so, because they don't want a third party, touching their system directly. So sometimes you do have to put an intermediary in that both systems can touch as their sandbox. But a lot of folks have homegrown or smaller systems that we can talk to directly.
And just to clarify, because this question has come up, Rick asked it, we're not talking on the mobile devices. You're not talking an app. This is browser based. So you simply go out to your
That's right.
Basically, the web browser that's connected to your particular Infinity QS Proficient server, and it's just serving up web pages, right?
That's exactly right. So there's not an app or anything else. It would be something that a company would say, okay, we're going to set this up on our web server, and so then you could just from your smartphone go to whatever www.mycompany.com/mobile data, and there it is. So,
yeah. So that also makes it device independent too, whether it's a laptop or an Apple or a Android or whatever. It's going to work with all those because it's simply just a web browser.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think that should answer Rick questions there, I think. And when we were talking, we keep talking about pulling data from an ERP system. Can it go the other way? If your ERP system needs something from Proficient, can it get it from Proficient? Can data communication go the other direction?
Yes. So our database is it's non-proprietary. So with our software, I mean, we show the schema and so the table and field structures and such. Of course, you want to be a little bit careful, and if you just go in and start banging around, you can cause problems for yourselves. But yeah, absolutely, you could from an external system. Yes.
A couple of quick questions. Charmaine wants to know, how do you set up mobile-based web page for entry? Is it done through Proficient software?
Okay, so basically what happens is we have something that's called a sampling requirement, which says for these products on these pieces of equipment, these are the tests that need to be run, and those live in our database. And then once you set those up, it's kind of like setting up a collection plan or a sampling plan. Then there's just you have to have the server set up. So assuming you have that set up, then there's just a checkbox that from the database you say, this particular sampling requirement I want to be used for mobile data collection, or I want these 5 or these 10 or what have you. So it's configured in our software, but you aren't going in and doing things like you're not designing drop downs or anything like that. Basically, the database knows there's a sampling requirement named cap diameter, and within that, it knows that it can only be run on these lines, and then I have it currently only tied to a certain product, so it just automatically knows that. So it's not like you're writing HTML code or building any of these yourself. That all happens automatically.
I think that's what Charmaine was asking. So based on your side, what the mobile, what you're going to look at through your mobile view, and Proficient software essentially. It's just creating it in the back end, and there's no coding or anything required.
That's right.
Okay. Rick wants to know, I'm not sure if this is someone you can answer. He wants to know if Proficient will interface with Exact Job Boss, which I'm assuming.
I don't know off the top of my head. We'd
Okay.
have to talk about that a little bit.
Okay. And we got a couple more questions here that are basically data sheet and that sort of stuff. So for those of you, some of you getting a little bit more specifics, probably makes more sense for these questions to talk to Infinity QS directly, or I'm assuming information on Proficient is also on your website? That's
correct. That's correct. So our website has all of this, and then certainly our global account managers are happy to start those conversations, about the products, and certainly they'll pull us in on the technical side of things as needed.
Now, kind of another interesting question for me, and maybe you touched on this at the top of the hour, but is Proficient being used mostly for data analysis, or how are people typically using this product?
We have all of these great tools for analysis and for doing process control and process improvement and things. To be completely honest, I think most people are using it as a central repository for their data. So as much as they want to do the analysis, they say, I don't have the time or the bandwidth or whatever, but they're using it as a replacement for their paper first and foremost. But then oftentimes they're surprised with the utility of the data once it's in the database. So it's funny, we have lots of folks that want it just as the repository, and then they really grow into the analysis capabilities once they see what they can do with their information.
Yeah. Well, Eric, I think we're at the end of our time here, and I don't see any more pressing questions. So, Eric, thanks for a great overview of the Proficient software and the capabilities, and just everything you can do with that type of product, from data collection to storage to analysis to the mobile apps and everything. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, thanks. We certainly enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. And as questions come up, don't be afraid to hit the website, and we will get answers to you. So thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you, Eric, for the wealth of useful information, and Infinity QS for hosting the webinar. And we hope all of you got some real useful information from all of this, and we hope to see you at the next webinar. So long.
Bye-bye. Thanks.